first, a little bit about us. Animoca Brands, we're based in Hong Kong. We're a global game developer and publisher, and we're best known for our relationships of working with brands. So we license third-party brands and make games featuring third-party brands. But today, I'm here to talk about blockchain primarily. Why blockchain? And why is blockchain interesting for us as a game developer? We find it interesting because we now see parallels in the universe of sort of the development of blockchain as a technology and the permutation of it in the consumer market and where the internet was 20 years ago. So if you know a little bit about blockchain, in order to use blockchain applications, you typically have to have a wallet, right? In order to hold your cryptocurrency or your tokens or whatever you want to call them. And so out there in the world right now, there are about 30 to 35 million wallets in usage on the blockchain currently, holding Bitcoin and Ethereum and whatever else on the blockchain. 20 years ago, here, 1996, there were 36 million web browsers in use. So roughly similar size audience. And so we see a lot of parallels in the potential for blockchain technology to explode in mass consumer adoption, but there hasn't been the application yet. So I would argue that most technologies don't find their way into mass consumer markets until there's an entertainment application, right? So blockchain has been largely, fintech, right? People bought Bitcoins to store value, and this was not something that necessarily appealed to the mass market, just like, BlackBerries were popular in a certain subsegment of the population for doing data over the air. But when we all started to be able to use smartphones for games and entertainment, everybody had to have one, right? So I think it's the same way in our opinion. As we start to marry entertainment applications and blockchain, we think that's going to bring blockchain to the masses. Now, we think gaming is actually a particularly good segment for that because blockchain is good at things that matter to game developers and game publishers, like control over your game economy. Blockchain was actually invented for the purpose of financial transactions, and that's what we have in our games, in our freemium games. Storage, safety, and security, it's the most secure version of doing things on the internet that we know how to make currently. And the price of in-game items. So I'm going to talk a lot about in-game items because I think that's actually where the sweet spot is for blockchain. So CryptoKitties, a game you may be familiar with. This is the most popular game on blockchain. Came out in 2017, brought down the Ethereum network at the end of 2017, and people have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for collectible cats. To explain to you briefly what CryptoKitties does, I need to explain the difference between a fungible token and a non-fungible token. And they're self-explanatory but terrible terms. Okay, so basically on the blockchain, everything on a blockchain is tokenized. So a Bitcoin is a token, and a Bitcoin is a fungible token, meaning I have one, you have one, we swap, we still have one Bitcoin. They're the same. A non-fungible token is the same type of token, but uniquely identifiable. So therefore, it's like each one has a watermark or a serial number. What that enables us to do is create digital content that is unique or in limited edition, and it's not copyable, and it's ownable. And that's the exciting application that we see for games. Because what if, when your players spend money in their games, things they buy, they can actually own? Meaning, they can shut off the game and it's in their wallet offline and they can store it in their freezer, right? They could potentially bring it to another game. Or they could potentially sell it if they decide they don't want to play the game anymore and sell it to another player. That opens up a whole new sort of world for player experiences, in our opinion, because it expands the whole idea of what it means to have an in-game economy. So the boring aspect of this is, if you think about people spending money in games, and I buy a car in a game or a sword in a game, and I'm spending, $10 a month on a game for those in-game items, if there's a chance that I can sell that in-game item when I decide not to play anymore, let's just say that $10 a month, maybe I can sell all my in-game purchases for $1. Is it possible that if I knew I could sell my stuff and recoup $1 for every 10 I spent, would I spend 11 in the first place? Because if the answer to that question is yes, we've just increased our market from $70 billion to $80 billion for our industry. And that's the part that I find exciting. Okay? So we have a little bit of a strategy that goes along with our sort of core competency of licensing. And I'm going to explain a few of the deals that we've been doing in recent years around the idea of creating collectible content, because we think that the entry stage, the easiest way to explain the benefit of non-fungible tokens or NFTs to users is through collectability, because those are your real hardcore users before you get to the mass audience of the game, the hardcore fans, right? So we decided to go with sports, which is a great category for hardcore fans. And so we made a partnership with a company called Lucid Sight. We acquired a company called Striking, and we made a licensing deal with the Formula One. Lucid Sight is the first company based in California to sign with a major sports league around the world to create non-fungible tokens. They launched their product last summer. The game is just launching now. And they're creating collectibles largely with a very American pastime, which is baseball trading cards. Because at least in America, the idea of collecting sports-related cards is particularly poignant for the sport of baseball, even though that's not the most popular sport. But the idea of collectability is imbued in the sport. So we've partnered with them because they've done a fantastic job of developing this concept and bringing it together with sports. We acquired a company in Germany called Striking because they focus on football. We love football. We think there's a huge global audience for people to collect content and enthusiastically trade content that's related to football. In particular, obviously, they focus on the Bundesliga and the German team clubs, but we're expanding out throughout Europe. The last one is Formula One. This we did the same way we make games. We did a straight license deal with the Formula One to license Formula One content to create a game and collectible items based on Formula One IP. Okay? And in fact, we just launched, we had a successful auction over this weekend, which I'll tell you about in a minute. The idea behind the game is essentially to create collectibles, but to use traditional game mechanics to encourage people to collect and speculate and have fun trading things in the game. You're creating a whole economy of different items, but you're also acting as an enabler for players to trade amongst themselves. So racing games are all about people kitting out their cars and speccing out their cars, changing the tires, changing the engine, changing the design, etc. And this will enable them not only to purchase things from us as the developer, but to trade amongst themselves, where we don't actually play a role. And we think that's really empowering for players, and that will really resonate with them because they'll have a lot more control over what it is that they're experiencing in the game. At the same time, there will be, so these are, for example, the types of items that become tokenized. Just as a reminder of the role blockchain plays, each of these items will be a token, kind of like a Bitcoin, right? So it appears on the blockchain and is a unique owned item that you put in your wallet, right? So what happens with all of these items is if the player universe in our title gets big enough and attractive enough, we will encourage other developers to partner with us and make games where people can use their items in their game, right? And that's what we saw with our partners at CryptoKitties, because so many people bought CryptoKitties that other developers started saying, hey, I'm going to make a game that you can use your cat in, because lots of people own cats now, and they want to do something with them, and there's only one game they can play, so they want to bring their cats and play in other games. So this kind of flips the idea of the platform on its head, because the content then becomes the platform, not the game. Okay? So we actually just did an auction over the weekend for the first official Formula One NFT. And I'm very pleased to say we did it to coincide with the Monaco GP. It sold for 416 ETH. For those of you who are counting, that's 107,000 US dollars. So there is a market out there for people who are interested. Also to speculate on the idea of collectibles, because of course this car and this token is unique. There will only ever be one. And that's part of the interest for people who are super fans. Beyond that, of course, there will be other characters and items, of which there will be many, many items. So there's both the limited edition concept as well as the mass market concept. The last thing I'm going to talk about is something besides sports. It's another one of our subsidiaries. It's a company called Pixowl. They make all kinds of games, but particularly they're well known for the Sandbox, which is a 2D user-generated content world. But now they're bringing the Sandbox to the blockchain and creating a three-dimensional metaverse based on the idea of a voxel. So user-generated content, we think, is a fantastic segment and ideal for the blockchain, because the idea is that users are creating physical things, physical things in a virtual world, if you will. But why not allow them the ability to own what it is they create and monetize their creations in the game? So we created a voxel editor, which allows people to essentially have virtual Lego bricks, if you will. And each voxel is made up of what we call sand, tokens. So the more complex the creation you make and the more voxels that it requires, essentially the more it's worth, because the more it costs you to make it, because you have to buy the raw material, right? The idea here is that content can be available in two ways. They can buy content from us as the developer, or they can make their own content. They can make it for their own usage, or they can put it in the marketplace and monetize the content with other users. So if you're a talented artist and you want to monetize your abilities, you can create your own content and make it available for sale for other players to download and use that content. And also, we will be licensing third-party content, and our artists will create licensed third-party branded content so that when you're playing in the universe, you can use that kind of content as well. So without further ado, this is probably the best way to show you what it's about. So the idea there is basically, as you can see, create a world, but then empower users to do what they like in the world. And the added excitement from our perspective is it has actually a fully functioning economy inside, so that users can then actually earn money and, make, monetize their creations. And hopefully that will be exciting. So that's all. If anybody has any questions, please let me know.
As a creator of that item,
yes.
If someone buys my item, I will get coins, right? Like the tokens, the sands, right? And those sands I can only consume on the setup, like in the portfolio of your games.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Unless
to entertain myself for other games. It's not.
Yes.
I can't monetize them.
Unless sand, then we decide to list sand on an exchange, in which case it's an ERC20 token, and you can change it for regular wrapped Ether or Bitcoin or other tokens.
Oh, okay.
So the fun part about blockchain tokens, non-fungible or fungible, is you could just list them on an exchange and then exchange them for any other. You're always 1 or 2 degrees of separation from fiat currency.
Right, yeah, thank you.
First, thanks for the presentation. It sounds very exciting, this idea like blockchain with game combined together. And my question is, we all know Bitcoin now, and then we all know how valuable it is. And so when we buy Bitcoin, this kind of virtual currency, you need to buy special wallet to secure it. Is there any request for this kind of?
Yes. So that's the one, what do we say in the game business? Onboarding challenge of blockchain games is that you have to have a wallet. So, and there are lots of wallets out there. And at the moment, I find the wallets seem to be improving on a quarterly basis. So the stuff that's out there in the market now is way better than what you got at the beginning of the year. And I think that's actually just going to continue to progress as we see the year go on into the beginning of next year. So yes, you do have to have a wallet. And there are a handful of solutions out there. MetaMask is one of the most popular, thanks largely to CryptoKitties. But yeah, you have to have a wallet. And I think, at a point where you have a lot of value, then obviously you might consider cold storage or something that's offline. Yeah. But for the most part, we view this as something very different from people who are collecting Bitcoin. This is a way to make sort of entertainment more fun, in our opinion, just because you have the possibility to collect and trade with your friends.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Is there any way that other games can use that sand coin in their games? Is there any integration that they have to do for that?
Absolutely. And if you have a game that you want to use sand in, please let me know.
Okay, but is it now publicly open for that?
Not right now, because the game itself will not launch till probably Q3.
Right, okay.
And we're just launching the marketplace, actually, and the framework of it now.
Right, so you will gradually open the market so that the other games will also try to.
For sure, because I think in the blockchain game community, it's a small community. We all know each other, and we're all trying to work together because we think that NFTs will be much more powerful if we all agree to be able to interoperate amongst each other, because that's the benefit. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to use your sandbox character in another game that's maybe completely different, right? In a battle game or a racing game, because that's fun too.
Yeah.
Right?
Thanks.
You're generating a lot of tokens.
Yes.
My understanding is that with blockchain, that gets unwieldy over time. Do you run out of runway in terms of the manageability of the blockchain? Does it become unwieldy?
So there's a variety of competing elements of a blockchain game that are currently where there are companies who are sort of fighting for market share and market space. Wallets are one segment. Blockchains themselves are another segment. So this whole idea of blockchain gaming started because of Ethereum, because Ethereum was relatively open and people could develop other applications on Ethereum. Following on that, you have other blockchains like Tron and EOS, and there are a whole host of different ones who are also trying to reach out to game developers to be the blockchain of choice for one reason or another to apply towards games. So I think right now there's a little bit of a standards battle, but at the same time, other people are working on bridging technologies so that you can actually use your NFTs across chains and games can work on multiple chains. So there is some stuff that still needs to be worked out, but it will, I think, be worked out in the next 12 months because there are a lot of very, very smart people working on this. The thing I find exciting about it is if we look at where we are in mobile gaming now, after 10 years, we've got about $100 billion in revenue globally. The blockchain industry is also about the same age and about the same size. About $100 billion has gone into blockchain, but none of it had anything to do with entertainment at all. So we've got these two equally sized pies that have never overlapped before. And that part is really exciting to me because they've spent a huge amount of money developing the technology behind blockchain for other more lucrative pursuits like assets and fintech. So we have a lot that we can benefit from in the game industry to sort of free ride off of all of that R&D for the last 10 years.
And as you say, we're sort of in the CompuServe, AOL Online era of blockchain compared to the internet
Yes.
25 years ago. So early
Exactly.
days. Robby, thanks very much.
Thank you.